You are now listening to the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast.
Wait, the answer was add 10 gallons?
Add 10 gallons.
My first thought was we got to put Acti-Gel in it.
Yeah, great.
Truck's on the way. On the way.
Yeah, okay. I've got two observations, neither of which are really educated or well thought out. Which are like most of my observations are.
There aren't a lot of problems on a job site that can't be solved with a sack full of biscuits.
Today's episode of the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast is brought to you by Acti-Gel 208. Acti-Gel 208 is a high-performance additive for the concrete industry that is greatly beneficial to the producer. It enables them to increase the percentage of manufactured sand by up to 100% and completely replace all the natural sand in the mix. In areas where natural sand is scarce, inconsistent, and expensive, this provides a huge benefit to any ready-mix company out there. Benefits of manufactured sand and concrete include consistent air content, improved compaction, and increased density. Now, in the past, the downside of using manufactured sands was that they were hard to pump, hard to place, and hard to finish. Well, Acti-Gel 208 solves all those issues. By improving suspension, stability, and the quality of the cement paste in the mix, Acti-Gel overcomes the old issues with manufactured sand and leaves them behind. Let Acti-Gel 208 improve the quality of your mix while saving money on every yard you produce. For more information, visit us at actigel.com. That's ACTI-GEL.com.
And welcome in, everybody, to episode 16 of the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast. We appreciate you being with us. My name is Josh, and as always, I'm joined by Paul and Joey. What's going on, Paul?
It's a good day in the industry, brother.
For sure. Joey, what's up?
Well, not a whole lot, man. Just got off a plane from Wyoming about 8 hours ago, so I'm tired.
A little jet lag from your cross-country flight there?
Wait, is that a red eye?
No, well, what time? I don't even know what time it is. It's 11 my time. I landed 12 hours ago. I'm sorry. Got home a couple hours after that. So, yeah, I left Denver at 7:30 local time. So 8:30 my time.
How was your week out there? Let the people know what you were into this week.
Oh, boy. So, yeah, I went to Wyoming this past weekend to do some turkey hunting. Got me a turkey on Sunday, and then Sunday night it started snowing, and it didn't stop snowing until Tuesday afternoon. So it dumped about 8 inches of snow on us, made it pretty hard to get around and walk around. So I kind of locked up the birds, didn't kill any more birds for the rest of the week, and then came home, and that was a very Cliff Note version of what happened.
Yeah, so you turned from a hunter into a hiker, pretty much.
Oh, yeah, I was just a fool walking around the Black Hills of Wyoming with a shotgun. That's all I was.
Well, at least you got a bird before it started snowing on you.
Yeah, those things are pretty. If anybody follows me on Instagram, I posted a picture of it. They're pretty birds. They got white tips on their tail fans, and they're big black and white turkeys.
What's your Instagram handle? Shameless plug.
Shameless plug is at Reverend434, my IG handle.
See a bunch of dead birds. See him introducing his tiny baby to dead birds. That's your thing.
You love to bring that up.
Yep. Yeah, that's turkey hunting and concrete. Those are the only two things I know anything about in life. So
there you go. I mean, you're not alone in that. It's quite the industry. It's a huge industry.
Yep.
Yeah, it looks like fun. If you don't grow up around it, nobody introduces it to you, then you don't go out and do it. You don't assign, specific meaning to that. But you want a guy who assigns meaning to it, Joey Bell's your boy. Go follow him.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely a legacy hobby. Hunting in general. You don't find too many people that just one day up and take up hunting as a hobby. I mean, there are some, don't get me wrong, but mostly it's like, my dad did it, my uncles do it. So, I was in a tree stand at 5 years old trying to be quiet.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to get my little girl interested in STEM type activities, right?
Yeah.
Math and science, that kind of stuff. And she's 5 in preschool, but can do math that would blow your mind. She's so smart. But beyond like just like the studies, trying to ingrain like a work ethic into her.
Right.
Proud Papa moment the other day. She was joking. She had her iPad. She was playing this app, and she said, "Dad, if you complete this task, I'll give you $1,000." I was like, $1,000? Where did you get $1,000 from? She goes, well, money comes from hard work. So I was working hard.
My God, if it was that easy. Or that simple, rather. Maybe not that easy, but if it was that simple.
Handouts in this family. You want money, you work for it.
Love that.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of hard work, that actually leads me into something I was reading earlier today as we get into the current events section of this podcast. If you're out there willing to do some hard work, maybe it is that easy to where if you work hard, you'll make as much money as you want to. Because right now, if you know how to work with your hands and you have a brain between your ears, they'll pay you anything within reason. But I was reading a study that was done by the National Association of Home Builders, and they say that there's a shortfall of 200,000 skilled trade workers in this country currently. And that's pulling data mainly from 2020. I mean, that's recent data. They said that that number has even surged a little bit at the beginning of this year. In Q1 of 2021, surged even upwards close to 300,000.
Golly.
Shortfall of skilled trade workers. And I mean, that's a big deal, obviously, because if you don't have people to build the houses, you're not going to build the houses, and everything goes into the price of, the cost of a house. Everyone wants to talk about how the price of lumber is way up, and it is. I mean, gosh, that's stupid. But also, people don't really think that 30 to 40% of the total cost of the home is labor. So,
Did they give any specific reasons for why there's a shortage of people? Because I think everybody listening to this is probably acutely aware of the home price situation, that the houses aren't even making it to market. And the ones that do last a couple of days. I mean, that happened to Joey literally when he was selling his house. But as people were looking around to buy, the prices are just through the roof, way higher than maybe even should be. And so I'm curious, I think it's a multifaceted problem in that industry of why those prices are so high. But one of the problems is what you're alluding to, that there's no inventory. So the way the prices come down is by more inventory. And one of the ways those inventories are balanced out is by new home construction. So if that's not happening, why? And you're saying it's a labor shortage. Are they indicating like what's causing that shortage?
Materials and labor shortage, yeah. But what's causing the labor shortage is no one's doing the work. I mean, there has been a huge push towards STEM career paths. And over the last 10, 15, 20 years, a lot of kids are going to college. You're starting to see the 4-year degrees kind of level out or even decline in some places. But, people aren't graduating high school and going out on the job site at the rate that they used to. And the average age, depending on where you look and what you read, the average age of a skilled laborer is in the 50s sometimes.
Jeez.
You're looking at, 42 to 58-ish, depending on what industry you want to hone in on. And there aren't a whole lot of 18-year-olds out there with a carpenter's belt on.
Yeah, ready to go swing a hammer.
Yeah. And how do you address that? Well, I mean, you have to make a career path that is attractive, and compensation is certainly attractive. Compensation and benefits, but I mean, you don't want to unionize.
Yeah,
because as I mentioned, I mean, you're already looking at 30 to 40% of the house being the cost of labor. You unionize, all of a sudden that's 60. So.
Yeah, we got to avoid the union conversation here. It'll go way into a horrible, terrible, dark place on this podcast.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Mike Rowe, I believe everybody knows who Mike Rowe is.
Yeah, the Mike Rowe Works Foundation is a pretty cool foundation. Why don't you read a little bit to the people about what that thing's all about, that Mike Rowe Foundation that he has set up?
Says, what's the problem? We've made work the enemy. America has become slowly but undeniably disconnected from the most fundamental elements of civilization: food, energy, education, and the very nature of work itself. Over the last 30 years, America has convinced itself that the best path for the most people is an expensive 4-year degree. Pop culture has glorified the quote-unquote corner office job while unintentionally belittling the jobs that help build the corner office. As a result, our society has devalued any other path to success and happiness. Community colleges, trade schools, and apprenticeship programs are labeled as alternative. Millions of well-intended parents and guidance counselors see apprenticeships and on-the-job training opportunities as vocational consolation prizes, best suited for those not cut out for the brass ring, a 4-year degree. In 2008, Mike Rowe created the Micro Works Foundation to launch a national PR campaign for skilled labor.
Yeah, that's when his television show started taking off.
It's basically a scholarship for skilled trades, for educating, secondary education, for vocational schools, technical colleges, apprenticeships, things like that. It's basically a blue-collar scholarship.
No, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely sounds like something Mike Rowe would do.
Yeah. Well, and there's also the HBI, the Home Builders Institute, and they have like industry career paths, apprenticeship programs, and stuff like that. And I actually think they're probably, as far as volume goes, they're probably the leaders in getting people into that industry. But I think it's twofold. I think there are a lot of people like Mike Rowe and HBI, and there's a lot of programs that are developing skilled workers to go out there and build homes and buildings and stuff like that. But the other edge of that blade is you have people retiring at a very fast rate. I mean, just the way the demographics work out in the industry, you have a lot of people retiring. So I mean, you are working overtime to keep the job sites full.
Dude, finishing concrete as an old man's got to be tough.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those are some grizzled dudes out there on the job
Yes,
site,
sir.
for sure. For sure. I don't know, man. I guess you can get used to dang near anything. But
Dude, I'm telling you, an industry that's paying good for techs is concrete.
yeah,
Man, you can make some good money working for concrete companies at an entry-level position, truck driver. I mean, some of these places are paying top dollar.
yeah. Well, and not to go the financial route on this podcast, because that's not what we're about. But wise man once said, it's not about what you make, it's what you spend. So if you're making a decent living, wherever that may be, I mean, that varies from different parts of the country. But if you're making a decent living and you don't have to pay $50,000 to $100,000 worth of student loan debt, I mean, look at how much further you are ahead of everyone that is paying that and making this similar money to you.
Are we turning this into the Dave Ramsey show? Because if that's the case, I'm ready.
No,
I've been preparing for this day for years.
I can subscribe to everything Dave Ramsey has to say. I do take his advice sometimes, other times I don't. But my thing. Like if you've listened to one of his shows, you've listened to all of them.
It's the best podcast out there besides this one.
Yeah. Well, what's great about our podcast is we got different guests from all over the industry, which is great. But there's also some new interest in starting concrete related podcasts. We're not the only one out there. And you come across a new podcast that actually has some ties to a guest we had. So go on and talk about that.
Yeah, our guest for episode 15, Sarah McGuire, her company, Geotech. She told us that they were thinking about starting a podcast. Well, it's launched. It's called The Construction Revolution. So if you guys like what we do, you like the construction space, you're interested in hearing some different type of speakers. They've got some speakers we don't have. They're a short form, interview only type of show, still packed with information and some good information. I'd encourage you to go listen to episode 3. To me, that was the most fascinating one. It actually has their chief technical officer on there. I don't want to butcher the guy's name. I can't pronounce it. It would be insulting to him. But a lot of the things he talks about is being an entrepreneur, because he was the co-founder of the company. So very, very well spoken and just does a great job of storytelling about what it was like going from being a PhD student to having a product and trying to take that to market in a mature industry, and the setbacks he faced and the hurdles he faced. It's very reminiscent of our Acti-Gel story, really. But listening to him and how he overcame that and how he's built the company that he has, and they haven't taken any outside funding, like it's all organic growth, and they just continue to put that money back in and hammer it. It's just really, really good, very interesting, really inspirational episode. If you got that entrepreneurial mindset like us, we're the kind of guys that like to, leave the cave, kill something, drag it home kind of guys. And if that's you, you'll enjoy that episode. So that's episode 3 of the Construction Revolution podcast by Geotech.
I'll go subscribe to that one for sure. How many episodes do they have on there so far?
I was on there last week. They had 8. They launched with 8 episodes. They're only like 20 minutes a piece. So it's not like this. There's not a bunch of fun, banter back and forth. But their host, has a good voice for radio, comes in, asks some pretty good questions. Some of them are a little bit softball, but that's all right. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's still very interesting and very in depth. So they're doing a good job. They're off to a good start. It's just different from us.
Yeah.
It's just different from what we do,
which is good, man.
and that's great.
Yeah.
But I think what they're doing is still good. It still has value, and the people that listen to the show will probably like that show as well.
Okay. I'll definitely go back and listen to that episode 3 specifically. I'm always interested to hear how people do things, how they work, their mindset, because sometimes you have guys that start off on a path and they know exactly what they do. And then other guys, they just, kind of, for lack of a better term, look into it. But certain situations fall a certain way and they're able to take advantage. And some guys just have this naivety about them, like this drive and naivety where like they won't let anything get in their way. And they're just like super focused and all the outside noise just kind of falls away. And, they just make it happen. They make it work.
Well, in episode 1 of their podcast is with their founder. And he talked about that where like they had a vision. And then when they went to market, they realized that like they didn't understand the market in practical terms like they thought they did in academic terms. Right. And there was just a huge gap between the technology and the research they were doing and what was actually doable and feasible in the field. And so when he got there, it was like, just a chasm he couldn't cross. So they had to pivot. And that mindset of just being a go-getter and a grinder is much more detailed in episode 3. Yeah. The CTO really goes after that. And I just found that very entertaining.
I'm always impressed when people can kind of pivot on the fly and just kind of deal with things that are hectic to some people, but then they stay cool, calm, and collected all the time, which is why I'm really glad we have Tim Hurtack on this episode, because to me, no one epitomizes that cool under pressure more than QC guys. QC guys, if you've ever been in a QC, lab or office, at least one phone, most of the time 2 or 3 phones are ringing constantly. They'll answer, give a short, give a short synopsis of what the problem is, how to fix it, hang up, answer another phone, do the exact same thing, and just they stay even-keeled, mild-mannered the entire time. And I've always been real impressed with that, because how many people do you know, if you throw them a little adversity, they automatically get like anxious and wound up and revved up, and everything's real important and has to be done right now. And they let everyone else's hectic mindset affect their own, and then nothing really gets done, or not efficiently anyway. So I'm always impressed with QC guys because they have this innate ability just to like cool down, take it slow, take one problem at a time and fix it correctly. So we'll get into that a little bit with Tim Hurtack here on this episode. Tim actually is with the Silvi Group, which is Philadelphia, Jersey.
No, it's Philadelphia based.
They
stretch up toward New York. I don't think they quite get there.
Right. Well, I was on their website and I was reading the origins of the company. They're a massive company now. They're vertically integrated. They have so many resources, so much capital tied up in the business, so many different locations, and they do a little bit of everything. But it started as a family business. Still is. Guess 2 generations ago, it had to be now, they had a butcher shop. The family had a butcher shop. They were owed a debt. A guy paid the debt with a block plant. The owner of Silvi Group was the son of the owner of the butcher shop. So dad says, "Hey, I got this block plant from a guy that, gave it to me to pay his bills. This is the way he could pay his bills." And I said, "Yeah, I'll take your business. So you got to go learn how to make block."
That's awesome.
Golly. Yeah. And then that's how Silvi Group got started. He learned how to make block, and then it blossomed from there into concrete plants, and then materials and quarries and so on and so forth.
Cement terminals.
And it's really become a huge business, but the huge business can be tracked back to its origins of a block plant that was given to the family to pay off a debt.
That's great, man.
So that's cool.
Appreciate you sharing that story.
Yeah, I wanted to, because we don't really get into that with Tim, because we get into the QC stuff and we get into the nuts and bolts of what he does. But I didn't want that story to go by the wayside. I wanted people to realize that back when this company was started 40s, I think 40s or 50s. It was a different world back then.
Mhm.
Business was just a different animal back then, which was cool. But yeah, with that story told, without any further ado, we'll get into our episode 16 interview here with Tim Hurtack, the QC manager for Silvi Group.
Thank you for joining us, Tim. We really appreciate you coming on here. Thank the good Lord that provided a rain day so your phone's not blowing up the entire time we're trying to have this conversation.
I appreciate to be here, guys. It's been looking forward to this and love talking shop here. So,
absolutely, man. Hey, can you tell the audience what it is you're doing, who you're doing it for, and where you're located at?
Sure thing. My name's Tim Hurtack, and I work for the Silvi Group companies. We're a large construction material supplier in the Metro Philadelphia area, with service areas in southeastern Pennsylvania and all of New Jersey.
Yeah, don't sell yourself short. Biggest in the state of Pennsylvania, right, Tim?
We're one of the biggest, for sure. Yep.
All right, good, man. Well, you work in a QC role, and that's kind of been your existence for a while. And I got to tell you, man, I love QC guys, ready-mix QC guys, because to everyone else in the company, the world is burning to the ground. It's a 5-alarm fire, all hands on deck. And you're sitting there cool as a cucumber, just phone going crazy. And, I was in your office only for like an hour a few weeks ago, and no less than 3 people barged in with what they thought was an emergency. And, with a blood pressure of 50 beats per minute, he just turns around, answers all their questions, and they run away.
I quite endearingly refer to most of our salesmen as Chicken Little, because to them, the world's coming to an end every 5 minutes, So, but being in QC, man, you gotta keep your wits about you, because it's not if something's going to happen, it's when, and it's all day long, and you're constantly putting fires out, and you just kind of go with the flow, man. That's all you can do.
That's it, brother. But how did you get into this spot? Like what's your background? Where'd you get all this knowledge? For the people that they're going to learn over this conversation that your concrete knowledge is second to none in the people I've talked to, and we've talked to a lot of people. And so I'm really glad you're here. You're going to learn us some stuff today. But how'd you get to this point? Where'd you come from? What's your background?
Well, that's a great question. Growing up in South Central Pennsylvania, my father's been in the aggregates business his entire career. Started out working for Bethlehem Steel in an underground coal mine, and then ended up working in an above-ground limestone pit. And ever since I was little, taking trips to the quarry on the weekends and checking out the loaders and watching all the neat stuff that goes on over there, I've always had an interest in that. So it really started at an early age for me. My father's been in the business his whole entire career. He's retired now from Vulcan Materials, but that was a big stepping point for me. Is when I was getting ready to graduate from high school. I knew I wanted to be in engineering, but I really wasn't sure where or how that where that path wanted to lead me. So when I got out of college, I started in the construction business, and I worked on the construction side as a project manager. And it wasn't until I took my second job out of college and I started working for a bridge division of a construction company. Over the course of the next couple of years, you really, building bridges, primarily it's out of concrete. So you start to learn about, basics of concrete mix design, form work, how to place concrete, finish concrete, the importance of curing concrete. You're looking at all the DOT specs. So guys building bridges, they're concrete guys. They have to be. And I was fortunate enough, the company that I worked for in South Central PA was a company called Conawago Enterprises. And they had a construction division, and they also had a ready-mix division. And one day I got called into my boss's office, and he said, got good news and bad news for you. He says, bad news is today's your last day at Conawago Enterprises. I said, uh-oh, what's going on? He says, well, good news is it's going to be your first day at Conawago Ready-Mix. We're going to transfer you down to the ready-mix division and trial by fire. So go down there and learn how to run a concrete plant, and I'll check in with you next week. So that's about how it got started. And to be honest with you, I had a basic understanding of concrete materials. And once I jumped into that role with that ready-mix position, it just started to build from there. You start with, hey, go spend a week with the QC guy. You start to learn the basics of gradation and sand, how important the sand is, and then had a lot of help along the way. A lot of our vendors and our suppliers, those guys are the knowledge freaks when it comes to concrete. I mean, I learned everything from our admixture suppliers, from our cement salesmen, and had a lot of good support, taking that next step from kind of getting the basic understanding of how things go together to progressing, through the material.
How did you make the leap to Conawago? At some point, you were with Sika, right? So tell me how that happened.
Sure. So I spent a couple of years at Conawago, and that's where I really cut my teeth in the concrete business. And my wife is originally from the New England area in Boston. We decided to get married and start a family. So we ended up relocating from South Central Pennsylvania, where I grew up, and moved to Boston. And that was a little bit of a culture shock for me, being a country boy from Adams County, PA. But going to work for Sika, that's kind of where a lot of the growth took place. I got exposed to a lot of the national guys, guys coming into the lab, and we really started to focus on concrete technology and how admixtures can incorporate, that growth. And so I spent some time at Sika. I was the regional technical services manager there, and spent a lot of time in New England, upstate New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. So I stayed fairly local, but my number one role there at Sika was to provide customer support when it comes to technical issues, troubleshooting, mix design development, material selection. So we also, it was kind of a two-sided role. One was to take care of our existing customer base, help them with mix designs, any troubleshooting they're having. Hey, my air's high, my air's low, that kind of stuff. And then the other side of it was business development. We were going into potential accounts, evaluating what they were doing, their processes, their materials, see what we could do to help them, whether it was, design and implementation of new mix designs, or whether it's, trying to skin the cat a different way and, maybe pull a little bit of cement out here and there, save them 50 cents to a buck on their mix designs, and look at it from an economic perspective as well.
Well, you mentioned that territory, and I mean, just in the state of Pennsylvania alone, going from the East Pennsylvania to West Pennsylvania, the materials changed drastically. So how much of a challenge it was for you in that area that you were servicing to get familiar with the rock, sand, and cement and water in those places to be effective for your customers?
That's Pennsylvania is a very unique place when it comes to ready mix production. You've got the gamut from your small family-owned producers that might have one or two plants and 5, 6, 7 trucks, to some of the very large producers we have in a state that own 25 ready mix plants, 3 quarries, sand plants, and you name it. And the materials vary just as much as the producers do. We're not blessed with natural sand in Pennsylvania. So if you want natural sand, you have to drive to the Maryland shore, to Delaware, to go pick it up, and it's expensive. In some markets, you can charge for that and get away with it, but a lot of time you're using manufactured sand. You're using the local materials that you have. Most of central Pennsylvania is pretty lucky with the limestone deposit. You've got some really good limestone there. Some people, they freak out a little bit when they hear you're using limestone, but the majority of the limestone in Pennsylvania is fantastic for ready mix production. It's hard, it's durable, it crushes very cubically. Most of it's very non-ASR reactive, so it kind of makes it easy in that sense. But you're right. If you can't just go up and change the local materials that you have, you got to make do with what you got, and you just kind of figure out the nuances of it. You start with your materials, you look at your stone, you look at your blended gradations, and then if you're having to use manufactured sand, then you start down that road and try to figure out how to make it work. Sometimes you have to cut it with some masonry sand. Sometimes you have to bite the bullet and drive 200 miles to go get some natural sand to make it work. But you start with the basics, you put it together, and then you start looking at it. I'm a big proponent of not trying to run a QC department from behind a desk. You've got to get your hands into concrete every day. And that's something that I stress to our guys here at Silvi is, every day is a new day, man. You got to get your hands in there and let the concrete tell you what it wants to do, because you're not gonna force it one way or the other. So you let the concrete tell you what it's going to want to do that day, and you go with it. You make your adjustments. If you try to figure out all the ins and outs of why it's doing this or why it's doing that, you'll chase your tail and bang your head against the wall. So concrete's an unforgiving animal if you try to tame it. So we just, you let the concrete tell you what it's going to do that day, and then you make your adjustments. And it's the same thing with those materials. You let the materials dictate, what they're going to do, and then you make your adjustments accordingly. So it's not so much about how much you know about concrete. You just have to be willing to go with it, make your adjustments as you need to.
Well, it's interesting you talk about having that field knowledge, and there at Silvi, you've incorporated that into your team. Like before someone can become a QC manager, they have to spend a year in the field as a QC tech, regardless of what their title is. You got to get out there and put in the work. Is that true for other departments, or is that just what you're doing for your team?
Absolutely. We probably 7 or 8 years ago, we've instituted a program called the Leadership Development Program here at Silvi. So that program's open to any college graduate. So you have to have a 4-year bachelor's degree in an engineering or construction related background. And that program was originally designed to bring in young college graduates who wanted to get into our business. And what it does is it gives them exposure to the multiple facets of what we do at Silvi. So it was mainly for operations trainees. They come in, they spend 3-4 months working at a ready mix plant. They might spend 4 or 5 months at one of our mining facilities, our hard rock mines, and then they might spend another 3-4 months down at one of the sand plants. So they see the breadth of kind of what we do as a company, and then depending on where there's need or where there's some openings, then it gives them an outlet to get their feet under themselves, kind of get the experience of what we're all about, and then kind of put them in a position to let them start taking over. And the program was a huge success. And so we started implementing this leadership development program into other avenues of our business. So we brought on some quality control people through the LDP program, where I think we're starting a position this summer in our dispatch customer service department. And it's just a great way to get somebody new to the business right out of school, shows them how we operate or the different sides of what we do. And then after that first year, it really puts them in a position to, have some leadership abilities, bring to the table what they have. And 9 times out of 10, it's a launching pad for a lot of our young leaders here in the company.
No, that's great. Are you guys taking college interns as well? Because that was valuable for Joey and I when we were in college, because, you could sit and read it out of a textbook as much as you want, and you can play with pilot scale models and work in the lab at university as much as you want, but it's a totally different ball game when you get out there and get your feet wet. So do you guys offer internships for college students?
Absolutely. We have, I think it's between 6 and 8 positions a summer. We'll hire summer interns in the operations group. We have 2 summer interns in our QC department this year. And I think we're also bringing on an intern to work in our customer service dispatch area again. Kind of quickly about what we do at Silvi. I mean, we're running 13 concrete plants right now. We have 13 plants in the fleet, and 12 of them are operational right now. And just the amount of phone calls and the customers that we deal with on a daily basis. We started with the operations group having interns, but now our customer service and dispatch department's so big, they benefit greatly from having some interns there too, because it's really tough to bring somebody into the dispatch side that doesn't talk the talk. You know what I mean? Try to educate a customer service rep on what slump is. Hey, what does it mean when my air is low and I'm sending a truck back? So it's good to get some of these these younger guys into the business, and through an internship, it's been very valuable to us.
Where are you getting those interns? Do you have a couple of universities or colleges around the state, or do you bring them in from all over the country, or where are you getting them at?
So I know most of you guys are CIM graduates from Middle Tennessee State, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. So we're really fortunate that up in Newark, New Jersey is New Jersey Institute of Technology, NJIT. Yep. And here at Silvi, we're very proud to be affiliated with NJIT and to be part of the CIM program there. Our Vice President of Human Resources is actually the chair of the Patrons Committee for the CIM program up at NJIT. and we recruit heavily from their department. And so as far as our LDP candidates and our summer internships, we recruit heavily from NJIT. There's a lot of great civil engineering programs locally in central New Jersey as well as southeastern Pennsylvania. So we will recruit anywhere we can find, willing candidates, but primarily, we focus on southeastern PA and New Jersey.
No, that's great. Joey and I are on part of the patrons. I just joined actually at MTSU, so the Tennessee program down there. Just joined last week. It was funny. We're talking to one of the patrons on the board. He was like, "How come you're not a member of the patrons?" I was like, nobody ever asked. I didn't even know how. And he was like, "Literally click a button, dude." He's like, "All right." And he's like, you pay your little fee to get in. And I was like, "Oh, well, I would have been supporting you long ago. Just wasn't sure." So I in that outreach kind of refocused me a little bit. Say, okay, well, if they're not reaching guys like me who are big proponents of the industry, we need to make sure that we're reaching people that may not be as aware of the program in the industry. So thank you, Tim, for those details. And I want to go back for a second to your time at Sika. We've talked a few times about one of the projects you had that was very, very challenging, where you were creating an SEC mix that had to follow through with some anti-washout characteristics and had to have like a slump retention time of some, ungodly amount of hours. What was that project? Hit me with it again. What was that project you were doing? And tell the listeners just it's really an impressive mix you guys designed. I want you to brag on yourself just a little bit.
I do like to brag once in a while, but I can't take full credit for this because you asked me earlier kind of where I learned all this from. And I have to give a shout out to one of my colleagues and one of my great buddies in the industry. His name's Chris Davis. He's a technologist at Sika, and he's a sales rep in that southwestern part of Pennsylvania and in West Virginia. But back from my days at Conawago, Chris was my sales rep. Chris and Bob Frontino, and those guys really kind of taught me how to get things done. And I was fortunate enough to join those guys at Sika after my time at Conawago. And we spearheaded a project up in north central Pennsylvania for the Army Corps of Engineers. And basically what it was is they were going to reinforce an earthen dam with a concrete wall. So basically they drilled a giant wall, cast in place wall into the face of this dam to stabilize it. And, anybody that's done work for the Corps of Engineers know how stringent they are and all their policies and procedures. And so we basically built a lab up in the middle of nowhere, put a portable plant up and partnered with a local ready mix company up there and set up the whole testing gamut. The washout tube for the washout for the Corps of Engineers. And it took, I think it was almost a full year of trial and error and development to get that mix designed to perform the way that they wanted it to. And essentially what it was a self-consolidating mix that would have to hold slump for, I think it was 12 hours. So, imagine being in a lab with two little, mini mixers, and you'd weigh up a cubic foot or maybe a foot and a half trial mix, and you started at 6 o'clock in the morning and you just watch it turn for 10 hours at a time, hoping it makes slump, and some days we get 6 or 7 hours and then it would tank. And then some days you would get it to hold for 18 hours, but then the stuff wasn't set up for 3 days. So, it's trying to find that sweet spot to hold slump for 12 hours and then to actually have it set up fairly quickly after that, because they would have to come in and core into that fresh concrete a couple days later to knit those panels together as they drilled it. But yeah, those were some long days up there. No internet connection. There's, not a whole lot to do up there, but we were just humping buckets around and doing these trial batches all day. But we got it figured out. And I think that project's finished now. It ended about a year and a half ago, but neat project.
That's such a crazy mix. 12 hours slump retention, and then, oh yeah, by the way, 24 hours later it needs to have all the strength it needs so we can come in and work on it. So we're about, as you know, Tim, we're about to run anti-washout mixes this week. We just built our own rig. Josh fabricated the fancy little basket you got to have and all that, and we We got this thing set up, ready to go. What challenges are we going to face? What do we need to look out for when we're running that anti-washout test? For people that aren't familiar with it, you got your tube. It's a column, vertical, filled with water. You put your concrete in a little metal basket, and you plunge the basket down in the water and pick it back up, and you weigh it before and after each plunge to see how much concrete you've lost, how much cement paste has washed out. And the different additives you're using, you're hoping you're going to reduce the amount of washout, hence the anti-washout test. So what challenges are we going to face, Tim? What's the hard part about this thing? What are the traps?
What's interesting with anti-washout mixes is, anti-washout admixtures in general are viscosity modifiers on steroids. So, in the circumstance where we were trying to accomplish is we were trying to provide a self-consolidating mix at a 24, 25-inch spread. But at the same time, this thing's going into groundwater, and we didn't want all the cement paste to wash away. So you're trying to blow this mix out to a 24, 25-inch spread, but not have it completely wash out when it goes into water. So you're kind of fighting it from two ends. So, one of the challenges we had was trying to find that balance between getting a nice concrete mix that would flow and be self-consolidating, but at the same time still hold up to that rigorous washout test. So again, it's a lot of trial and error. You might put a mix design together on paper that you're like, man, this thing's a home run. We got it made. And then you put it, you run a mix, you put it in a tank, and it fails miserably. And you're like, well, what just happened? So my approach is to don't worry about why it failed. Just figure out what to do on the next one. And just, it's iterations. You just keep doing it over and over and over again until you get it to where you want it to. And you go from there.
Well, it's interesting that the Army Corps that you mentioned is so stringent on their specs, but your SEC mix is probably way out of bounds for the anti-washout mixes they prescribe, because the one that's prescribed is like a 6-inch slump.
Right.
Yeah. Now, see, that was a little unique up there because of the project. It was, a one-of-a-kind type deal. So we had a great relationship with the local team that we had in place. Mm-hmm. So obviously they've got their rule book that's, 5 inches thick of everything you can and can't do. But at the end of the day, we wanted to get the job done and they wanted to get the job done. And it kind of evolved from, hey, here's a prescriptive approach. This is what we want you to do. And it kind of morphed into, I wouldn't say a performance-based spec, but they gave you some leeway to try to get the mix to do what they wanted it to do at the end.
What was the name of the dam? So people that want to look this up, that are listening to the show, want to look up the dam. Which one was it?
I believe it's called the East Branch Dam. It's in north of St. Mary's, Pennsylvania. It's on the East Branch of the Clarion River.
All right, 10-4 East Branch Dam. All right, we'll put a link to it. One of the big things on the show that we like to cover is technology. And the guest we had on in episode 15 was Sarah McGuire from Geotech. They're doing the maturity sensors, and we love that technology. We love the idea of reducing as much human error as humanly possible in the design, testing, placement of concrete. We love the idea of just streamlining things, and love that technology is going to help concrete do that. What technology excites you out there in the industry?
Well, Sarah's technology, for one, is very exciting. We're actually we've done some work with Geotech in the past, and we're in contact with them now about developing some high early strength concrete mixes utilizing their technology. So that's pretty exciting. Another big piece of technology that we've really come to embrace in the last 2 years is we're big proponents of a new product out there called the AirTrack system from Sidra. And what it is, it's a panel that gets installed on the barrel of a ready mix truck that monitors in real time air content, concrete temperature. And it has been a game changer for us. So we currently have 16 of our trucks fitted out with that technology, and we have some new trucks on order coming in this summer that we're going to put that technology on as well. It's been really good for us because what it allows us to do is our old model of how we used to manage our QC team. we're running 13 plants. I wish I had 13 guys to stick at every plant and, take care of it that way. But, we've got some really high horsepower plants that are cranking out 1,000 yards, 1,500 yards a day. And then we have a couple smaller ones that might do 200-300 yards a day. So what we found with the AirTrack system is our smaller volume plants, we can remotely monitor what the concrete's doing using the AirTrack system. So I don't necessarily need a technician at that plant to make adjustments, to actually physically be there with a slump cone and an air pot, seeing what the concrete's doing. So I have access to all of the trucks through an internet connection. So anywhere I'm at that I have a cell phone or a laptop with internet, I can monitor any one of those trucks. I can see what the concrete temperature is. I can see what the air content is. I can see which way the barrel's turning. So it's crystal clear as day when the truck gets to the job site, how long he mixed up before he, gave a sample to a tester or that sort of thing. And we can see how long it takes for him to unload the truck. Another use of that technology is, by interpretation on which way the barrel's going. It's pretty obvious when the drivers are adding water between the plant and the job site. So you always ask them, hey, how much water did you add? Oh, I didn't touch it. Well, add 10 gallons. There you go.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we do more like 20 or 30, but it's pretty wild because I can see you can see on the graph that their barrel's in full charge mode when they're getting loaded at the plant. Then they drive down the road, and most of them lock it into drum control, and the barrel's creeping down the road, and all of a sudden, 15 minutes later, you see the barrel rev up again for 5 minutes, and all of a sudden you see your air start to go up again. I'm like, yeah, I got you there, But it's pretty wild because it's actually taught us as a QC group a lot about the way our concrete behaves from the time it leaves the plant to the time it gets to the job site. Most guys in QC, we know that your air is going to decay and you're going to lose some slump going down the road. So obviously, if we're shooting for 6% air and a 4-inch slump at the job site, we're probably going to be batching it a little looser than that, and we're probably going to be batching the air 1-2% higher, depending on what's in the mix, just a vanilla mix. But with these AirTrack systems, we're correlating what the barrel revolutions are doing and what the concrete's doing in conjunction with that. And most of our guys, we're lucky at Silvi. We have 210 front discharge trucks. Our entire fleet are front discharge trucks, and they all have automatic drum control. So they get loaded at the plant, they go down the road. Most of them will lock that into, constant RPM, and the truck's going down the road and the barrel's only turning at 1 or 1.5 RPMs a minute. And that's like the kiss of death to concrete for us. The way our mixes are designed, the admixtures that we use, you see a huge decline in air content, and our slump values were, we were losing a lot of slump. And it wasn't that there was a problem with the mix or there was a problem with the admixtures or whatever. It was just a matter of how we were maintaining those loads going down the road. And it was a big eye-opening experience for us because we started telling these guys, hey, when you leave the plant, drop that thing into drum control, but get the RPMs up to like 3-4 RPMs going down the road. And all of a sudden, our slump started stabilizing. Our air content really stabilized. And that was a game changer for us because now instead of trying to shoot for these crazy targets that are out of spec, I mean, it sounds silly. You're intentionally batching concrete out of spec, hoping that it'll end up in spec when the truck gets there. And now there's all different kinds of technology with slump retaining admixtures and this and that, and what it all comes down to is making sure the drivers are doing what they should be doing, and educating the guys and saying, hey, loads with high doses of super plasticizer might behave a little differently, but ignore that slump gauge in your truck and just haul it appropriately, keep your barrel speed up to where it should be, and just let the concrete do what it's going to do. And that's been a big one for us.
Do you guys have a specific program that teaches your drivers about concrete fundamentals or anything like that, or do you know of any or can suggest any?
Well, we're huge proponents of the National Ready Mix Concrete Association, the NRMCA, and their training programs in general are fantastic. I think Paul and I met at the NRMCA short course 10 years ago, maybe, Paul.
Yeah. 2011, something like that.
Yeah, but we really encourage our drivers to go through the concrete delivery. I think it's the professional concrete delivery program, or it's a certified delivery professional or something like that. But anyway, it's a training course for the drivers to go to, and it's, instead of just calling them a truck driver, now they're a certified delivery professional. And what it does is it gives some credence to what they're doing, and it provides a lot of good training for them. And then we try to educate our guys just based on what the mixes are doing. So we try to make them aware, hey, pay attention on your delivery ticket. There's going to be a line item at the bottom that says if this load has super plasticizer in it or not. So if a load has super P, the guys know that it's going to behave a little differently than a regular 4-inch slump mix going down the road. So we try to, keep the guys educated on what we're doing with the mixes. If we make a fairly big adjustment to the mix design, we're going to tell the plant managers, hey guys, this mix here in particular, it's a workhorse mix for us. We made a pretty drastic change. Get the word out to the drivers. Let's see what the mix is doing. And, we try to be proactive with the drivers in that regard.
No, it's great. Hey, speaking of the NRMCA, I want to get back to these concrete hatches in just a second. But speaking of the NRMCA, Tim, I'm trying to convince our friend Colin Lobo to come on the program. So if you could please pressure him to get his rear end on the show. Anybody listen to this, go out, send him messages, tell him you love the program. He needs to get on here. Dude's a genius. Everybody needs to hear from him.
Yeah, eventually he'll be the only one that hasn't been on the program, and then we can all peer pressure him.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the plan.
I tell you what, Colin and Gary Mullings and all those guys down there, they've been just a tremendous resource for the industry in general. We're really lucky that we have a group like that we can use as a resource. Like we said, I went through the short course 10, 11 years ago, and I keep that manual on my desk. The book that I got from that class 10 years ago, I'm still into it. The pages are ripped out of it. I had to re-hole punch the thing 3 or 4 times. It's duct taped together, but it's a phenomenal resource. And the durability class is a game changer for, guys like me in the QC side, technical services. That's huge, because that takes your level of understanding from what a slump cone is and what an air pot does and why it's important to the mechanics of what the concrete's actually doing. It gets into, cement chemistry and their reactions with, slag and fly ash and silica fume, to durability issues. That's a hot button these days. Alkali silica reactivity and, sulfate attack and you name it. But I can't say enough good things about the NRMCA. They've been a tremendous asset for us.
Well, that makes you only the second other person I know of other than me that's taken that level 4 course. I'm assuming you also passed it. But the best thing about that durability course to me was it reinforced the idea of you need to be able to identify the problem first. Like, how do you identify that it's sulfate attack? How do you identify that it's ASO? How do you identify the crazing, curling, cracking, decracking? What is the difference in decracking, and how do you differentiate that from other cracking? And to be able to recognize that and then say, okay, now that I recognize what the deterioration problem is, now I can go back, analyze, and find out why it happened and how do I prevent it from happening in the future.
Yeah, it's, I try to take some of our younger guys in the field with me anytime I'm doing an investigation into scaling, cracking, any sort of, customer issue where, I like to bring the younger guys out and say, hey, tell me what you see and what do you think, what caused that? Instead of trying to teach them everything in the office or in a training session where they're just looking in a book. I think it's important to get them out in the field and let them see firsthand what a lot of these issues are. And then once you recognize the issue, then you can start working backwards to figure out how you're going to fix it going forward so you don't have those issues anymore. Some of it's in our control, some of it's not. But at the end of the day, it's important for those guys to understand exactly what the problems is, what they are, so they can go to the customer and say, you know what, maybe we should have, or maybe we started the finishing process a little too early and we trapped some bleed water, or maybe we were out of spec, coming out of the concrete plant, and maybe we were a little too wet and you had some plastic settlement that occurred and that sort of thing. So it's understanding the mechanisms of all this is important.
Speaking of that, Tim, and you being in the QC role, looking back from where you started to where you are now as you're mentoring these younger guys, is there one particular issue or aspect of that diagnosis or diagnostic period where it clicked with you in the field? You mentioned like there's just some things you can't grasp fully from a textbook. You got to be on the job site. Is there one issue that clicked with you after being on the job site and then you finally got it from being in the field?
I think one of the big things is you don't get all the information up front from the customer. You usually just get, man, your concrete was bad today. It was just really bad. Well,
Tim, they're never going to call you until you did a good job. All right?
I know. I gave up on that a long time ago, but you take the initial phone call from the customer just saying, man, the concrete was terrible today. It did this or did that. But then to go out and understand why it was bad. So, just a couple weeks ago, we were doing some work, down outside of Philadelphia, real close to the Delaware River, and it was 25-30% relative humidity. We had a 25-mile-an-hour wind coming off the river, and the guys had some issues finishing the concrete. And it was as simple as, guys, put this thing on your phone. It's a weather app. It tells you what your evaporation rate's going to be. If this thing's red, maybe think about not waiting. Pour early in the morning before the sun comes up and get this thing covered before you really start to bleed off all your evaporation. And it could just, and a lot of time it's just educating our customer that cleans up a lot of those loose ends, because most of the time we're not going out to investigate catastrophic failures. We'll have some cracking here and there, or we'll have some spalling or delamination. I mean, when you provide concrete in the mid-Atlantic area, our freeze-thaw cycles are terrible. I mean, it's just, if you're up in northern Maine or Canada, it'll freeze and then it stays frozen for the whole winter and then you're fine. But in our geographic area, it freezes every night and then it thaws out every morning, and then it freezes again, thaws out. And guys love putting salt on concrete, and that's bad news, and people don't want to hear it. And I understand the liabilities of it, but rock salt and concrete, they do not like each other at all. And so most of the time it's not so much, diagnosing those massive areas or those massive issues, but it's more educating our customers on the little nitty-gritty details on how to make a good job a really good job.
We've talked about it on here. If anybody can come up with the technology that truly makes concrete impregnable, once it's placed, it's down, water cannot migrate through the surface. It has zero chance to get to the reinforcing steel and cause all the issues we all know about. If you can truly create that product, then that's $1 billion idea.
Oh yeah, that'd be pretty funny.
Yeah, Tim, have you seen anything out there that's coming close to providing that solution?
No, because most of the time you solve one problem and you start to affect an area on the other side. Silica fume's great at densifying concrete, but at the same time, it becomes hard to finish and hard to manage from a producer standpoint. So there's all these gives and takes, and it's one of the great things about concrete, and one of the things that will drive you crazy every day is the variability of what you're doing. You're working with raw materials that change every day. I get calls from customers all the time. Man, the concrete was awesome yesterday. Why is it, it's doing something totally different today? And it's just like, we're not making widgets here, guys. We're not on an assembly line just cranking out the same thing over and over again. Our raw materials are changing every day. Our sand gradations are fluctuating. Our stone gradations are changing. Even the cement, here at Silvi, we're lucky because we own one of the world's largest single source cement terminals anywhere in the world. We can hold 165,000 metric tons of cement and cementitious materials at one location. So, we import our cement 50,000 tons at a time, and not all that cement is the same. No matter how good of a job the cement plants are at keeping everything, all their quality procedures in check, there's going to be variability in your cement as well, and we see it. It's a matter of managing your materials, as far as, something that fixes all your durability issues. If there's something out there that I haven't seen yet, I'm dying to get my hands on it, because that'd make my life a whole lot easier.
No, that's right. Hey, you throwing out big numbers like that on your cement usage. We got a bunch of cement producers that are listening to this podcast. So you're probably going to get some phone calls. I'm really sorry about that.
One thing I really like, being here at Silvi is we're vertically integrated on our material side. So we control just about every aspect of what goes into our concrete. We have our import terminal facility. It's about 10 miles from our main office. It's right on the Delaware River. It's a deep water port. We can bring in any size ship, that we can fit up the river. So we're importing cement. We're importing slag right now. We were importers of fly ash years ago. Fly ash is getting harder and harder to come by, and quality fly ash is getting really hard to find. So we have pretty good control over our cement and our SCM materials. And then we also own and operate a rock mine outside of Princeton, New Jersey. So we're self-supplying, I think, 5 or 6 plants in the fleet with our own stone. And then we own and operate 3 sand plants in the state of New Jersey. So 100% of our ready mix plants are using our own internally produced sand. And we've got, most quarries, they're in sand plants, they're not producing for a specific intended use. They're producing to a spec, but that same 57 stone or that same number 8 stone, it could go anywhere. Whereas we're focused on our production specifically for our concrete use. So, that kind of helps keep everything in check.
So everybody in concrete knows the fly ash shortage situation. Everybody been howling at the moon about it for more than a decade now. And every year it seems like more and more of reality. And then some of these ash guys are dredging up their old ponds and they're finding ash in the ponds, drying it out and selling that. So cost is going up, year over year. And Tim, are you seeing any products out there, any innovations in the industry that are going to be able to replace the fly ash as it goes off? Or are you just going to start supplementing with straight cement? What are you seeing?
I saw a survey on LinkedIn the other day that was asking about the fly ash shortage and what your intentions were if you lost your source of fly ash. And most everybody, I think it was over 50 or 60% that responded said that they were just going to switch to slag or silica fume. Class F fly ash is a great mitigator for ASR. So some areas, actually, even locally, northeastern Pennsylvania is pretty susceptible to ASR damage because their aggregates up there are reactive. So those guys are using fly ash to help mitigate ASR. So they have some options to a different material. They might look at using slag, or they might be looking at some admixture-based solutions to take care of ASR. I'm lucky. We're very blessed here in the southern part of Pennsylvania and New Jersey, where the majority of our aggregates are non-reactive. So we're not typically using an F ash for mitigation purposes. We're going to be using more as a cement replacement. As fly ash gets harder and harder to find, I think the slag guys are going to get busier and busier because that's the easiest material to go get in replace of fly ash. But there's some new technologies out there. I know we've looked at recycled glass as a pozzolan. There's some other options out there that we've looked at, but as far as what we're doing, we have control over our slag coming into Riverside. We've got some pretty good sources. We've looked at slag all over the world, and we've identified some pretty good sources, and we have some pretty good relationships there. So we're going to continue to rely on slag, I think, going forward.
Josh, did you have any further questions for Mr. Hurtack?
No, nothing indirectly here. He covered a lot in this interview. We appreciate your time, and we'll let you get back to it. We know you're a busy guy, and for you to take an hour out of your time to be on the podcast today is something we truly appreciate.
Guys, it's been a pleasure, and I love what you're doing with the podcast. I'm pretty much a concrete nerd, and I really love listening to everybody, all these episodes, and it's great for the industry, and really looking forward to hearing all the other episodes coming out, and wish you guys all the success, man.
Thanks, Tim. I really appreciate that. Joey, before we let him go, do you have anything else for Tim?
No, just like Josh said, appreciate you coming on, Tim. Glad to hear everything's going smooth up in Pennsylvania and everything's getting back to normal, and looking forward to seeing what you guys got in store for us in the future.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right, Tim.
All right.
Take care, brother.
Take care.
Yep. See you.
Bye.
See you, man.
And that's all for this episode. Thanks for joining us here on the Add 10 Gallons Concrete podcast. And one final thank you to Tim Hurtack and everything that he has shared with us here on this interview from his time at QC Manager at the Silvi Group. Be sure to follow us on social media and our Facebook and Instagram page. Search us out by searching Add 10 Gallons to see a video element of the show and some promotional items for upcoming guests and interviews that we'll post on there from time to time. Also be on the lookout for our upcoming episode 17, where it is confirmed we do indeed have Colin Lobo coming on the show. So something to look forward to there for you guys. So until then, we'll catch you next time on the Add 10 Gallons Concrete podcast.